So you're on the bargaining team. What's the mood like when people ask, is a deal going to get done? Being on the bargaining team, do you see a deal getting done?
We've been making a lot of progress pretty much since we went out on strike. That seemed to be what the mayor and her staff were waiting for, was for a strike for them to start moving things into gear. So I feel like a deal is on the horizon. And on the horizon, is that in days, weeks? It's hard to tell because negotiations can speed up and then slow down, and a lot of it is waiting on proposals. We've had some agreements, but also at this point where there's still some outstanding issues that we need to nail down. 300,000 students are out of classes. You typically every day are in the classroom, you're with your students. So what does it feel like to be not in the classroom, actually out on the street? It's absolutely awful. I would say that, the fact that we have the solidarity in the streets is a very motivating factor. Yeah. I really miss my students. I teach Chicago history and civics, 2 classes that I love. I have amazing students. I miss all 150 of them every day. Before we went out on strike, they all told me that they stand up for us. One of the students relayed this anecdote to me about how she has a number of allergies, and there's never been a nurse around when she's had an allergic reaction in the school. So I told her that this is, a fight that we have for her and for other people in her situation, because every student deserves, the quality care workers, small class sizes, and experienced teachers. One of the things that has been mentioned and was a point of contention is salary. And so teachers, you were offered a 16% raise increase over 5 years. The teachers union rejected it. How important is an increase? How expensive is Chicago to live in as a teacher? Chicago's very expensive, and that's part of the reason why one of our bargaining demands was about affordable housing, not just for ourselves, but for our students. We want to have we want rent control. Like in Illinois, rent control is illegal. We want the Chicago Public Schools to be a partner with us, since we're all working with the same students to alleviate these problems and make sure that our students aren't shifted around the city. But to talk about pay, really one of the big sticking points is the fact that the mayor is insisting upon a 5-year contract and wants to increase our healthcare in those final 2 years. And that's just, we have so many members with illnesses, catastrophic illnesses, sick family members, and it's really critical that we keep healthcare affordable for everyone. How do the bills add up for you? Well, my wife has metastatic breast cancer, so our medical bills are really high. They're not the average, and that kind of worries me when you start hearing numbers about capping off coverage and things like that. We really need to have those costs controlled. In the last contract, our healthcare has gone up quite a bit in the final years, to the point where you're choosing whether or not you're buying medication or going on vacation, or groceries for some people, and that shouldn't be the kind of decisions that we're making. And you bring that stress into the classroom. And our students are definitely feeling the same kind of stress with their medical bills and their housing insecurity. And it's created a very traumatized school system. And we're hoping with this contract to reverse some of that the damage.
Teachers and organizers saying they hope the strike will push the city to allocate more resources for their schools and their classrooms. Alexa Liautaud is live now in Chicago talking with members of the community. And Alexa, we know Senator Warren came to Chicago this morning. She was out there with the teachers. Tell us about her visit today.
So Senator Elizabeth Warren came today. She was at a rally with crowds and crowds of teachers. This is something that was a very popular event. It definitely brought in a lot of people. We've seen a lot of support from teachers, not just the teachers, but the parents as well. So it seemed like people really gathered around her. Her message was about solidarity. It was about standing with teachers. And she really seemed to understand that this wasn't just a local movement. This was something that she wanted to address as a nationwide issue.
Alexa, Kendall mentioned to you that he and some of the other members of the union are outraged with the mayor's tactics so far. What did he say to you, and what's going on there with the mayor?
So there's several key issues that Kenzo and I talked about. One of them is that letter, the letter that the mayor sent out on Monday night, essentially saying that essentially asking the teachers to go back to work, go back into the classrooms before a settlement can actually be reached. And that really rubbed people the wrong way. And especially Kenzo said that that was one of the big issues that he saw. The second is money. So he said that him and his colleagues, they feel as though there is a pool of money to be spent on resources that is not on resources that they're asking for that is not being spent. While the mayor, the city, is saying that that actually isn't the case. The mayor told reporters today that there isn't an infinite pool of money. So the idea of money and where the money is coming from, how much money there is, seems to continue to be a real point of contention here.
Any idea of where negotiations stand right now? I know there have been some questions about whether they've made any progress, any updates?
So yesterday, it really felt like there were incremental moments of progress. One of the issues that was addressed was homelessness, essentially how to best support students who are dealing with transitional living situations. I was hearing from that from teachers, as well as other tentative agreements. And then today, things have gotten a lot quieter. It doesn't seem, at least from the teachers that I've spoken to throughout the day, it doesn't seem like there are those incremental moments of progress. And it goes back to last night, the letter. I can't emphasize enough just how much it seems as though, and the teachers feel as though, this has thrown a wrench in negotiations. So it'll just be interesting to see later tonight how the whole day pans out. But as of now, it seems like today the negotiations have gotten a lot quieter. The productivity has sort of slowed down compared to the last few days.
Alexa Liautaud live in Chicago. Thank you so much.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.